Welcome to the Hall of Fame Fatherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Mistovich, and today I'm joined by Timothy Reigle. Tim is a husband, father, coach, author, and podcast host. Tim, thanks for joining me tonight.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so we're going to get into kind of your neck of the woods, your specialty, porn, is something that you've overcome and you are helping guys overcome. And it's a very important topic. And for me, just to, share a little bit about my relationship to it. I'm 41, so I, grew up when there were still magazines and stuff. And that was the big, you had to find a way to sneak the magazine, up to our room or whatever. So my first exposure to it, I think I was right around 10 or 11 at a neighborhood friend's house up in the attic,
Right.
Penthouse. And then it always kind of lingered around. And then always had the justification of it's no big deal. There's nobody getting hurt. There's no outward effects. And, even once I got married, there was still that justification and even understanding on my wife's side, it's no big deal. And, so just wanted to, use that as a jumping off point as, it's obvious with the extreme ends, but maybe if we can start with the guys who are just justifying it in their everyday, and what effects does that have?
Yeah, and I think your story is a common one, one that I hear all too often, where guys were exposed maybe innocently and grew into it, and it became a problem, but they didn't realize it was a problem because the whole world just thinks it's no big deal. And, like you say, it's victimless. Nobody gets hurt. It's just, blowing off a little steam, letting off some pressure, just relaxing, just having some dirty fun, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've come as a society to accept that and think that that's the truth. And in turn, men have come to accept that and think that's the truth. And even more, their wives have come to accept that as the truth. But that's not the truth. The truth is that porn is destructive. It damages families, it damages your health, it damages your livelihood, it damages everything about your life. It's kind of the silent type of killer. Nobody's going out and watching too much porn and, driving their car into somebody else and killing a family. It's not like booze or, nobody's overdosing and dying of porn. So it doesn't get talked about as being as dangerous, but it's just as destructive to the family and to relationships and to men in general. So men are getting to the point where they're watching so much porn that they would almost prefer porn over having sex with their spouse. They'd rather just go rub one out versus having a relationship in connection, having real sex with a real woman. Maybe they aren't even married. And then they go to have sex with a real woman and can't even get it up. One of the things I point out a lot is you see all these commercials all the time for ED drugs. I think, Roman and Hims and stuff are the big ones right now. Look at the age of the men that are in those commercials. They're not
They're young.
right. They're not the Hugh Hefners that were advertising these commercials 15, 20 years ago. They're
Right.
not the silver fox, that they had in the Viagra and Cialis commercials of yesteryear. They're young guys in their 20s and 30s, guys who should be at the peak of their virility, who should be able to pop a boner at the drop of a hat, to be honest, and should have no problem. And these guys are struggling getting it up. Well, what's happening? It's not a medical thing. Nothing medical has changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's these guys are so addicted to porn and become so desensitized to sex that they can't even get it up without watching porn. Then you add into it the guys that are married, and it's ruining marital lives. So either the wives are finding out and it's having destructive effects on that, or a lot of men don't even want to have sex with their wives anymore. They'd rather just watch porn. It's easier, it's simpler, and they don't have that fear of facing rejection and get turned down. I've seen it destroy families. It almost destroyed my family, almost destroyed my marriage over 15 years. Praise the Lord, I was able to turn my life around, and my wife and I were able to get back together and work things out, and she's able to forgive me, and we've moved forward now, and we have the best marriage we've ever had. But there's this overwhelming thing that, porn is just harmless, and it's no big deal, and it's just normal, and everybody does it, and it's not the case. And more guys are finding that out and turning away from it. You see the no-fap movement has gained a huge foothold. You see big advocacy groups like Fight the New Drug. There's celebrities coming out talking about the dangers of it. You're finally starting to see some of movement in the amount of sex trafficking that's involved with porn. You're seeing a lot come out about that. So, guys are finally starting to realize that, hey, this isn't just a harmless fun. This is actually causing destruction in my life and my family.
I wanted, you touched on the commercials.
Right.
And this fathers to, either, both young boys. I have a 6-year-old son, and even young girls. Like, how do you approach that? If you're watching TV and that comes on, is that something that you change the channel real quick? How do we shield them from that just being a normal part of their lives?
Right. Well, I think it's best to avoid those types of things. I mean, kids shouldn't be watching stuff that has over-sexualized imagery in it, obviously. Now, that being said, the world is exposing them to more and more stuff at a young age, and it's pretty darn impossible to avoid it completely. So that's where you have to have that conversation with your kids and build that relationship with your kids to where you can talk about these sort of things. I tell guys, whatever age you think your kid is too young to talk about sex and then turn porn, talk about it a year or 2 years before then. Because the average age for boys, now, women in porn is a whole other issue. I specialize in men. The average age men are first being exposed to porn is about between 8 and 10. So that means you have to have that conversation before then. And a good friend of mine and pastor, Michael Foster, wrote a piece about it where he said that the battle against porn starts when kids are toddlers. Now, what he didn't mean by that we go and, talk to your 3 or 4 year old about porn. That's not what he's saying. But it starts with teaching kids not to indulge on every pleasure they want. To teach them to work towards delayed gratification versus instant gratification. So the 3-year-old that wants their dessert before their dinner, just teaching kids those habits helps them once they've learned to not just go after every impulse and go after every urge that they have, and discuss those things and teach kids that, hey, some of these things aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves. Sex isn't a bad thing in and of itself. But using it in this way is bad. And here is why. And so starting to have those conversations on things that have nothing to do with sex is where to start with that. And then once they're old enough, then you start talking about those sort of things.
That makes me think, my son will be 7 at the end of April.
Yeah.
It's like I'm on the cusp of that.
Right.
And I have an older son who's 23. I remember being open with him fairly early.
Right.
But it was intentional, but I don't know if I approached it right or if it was informational enough, because he still fell into some of the same trappings. But where would you point somebody like myself that's on the cusp of that, to prepare themselves as the father for that conversation?
I think it's just do your research and understand that you have to have control of it yourself. If you're still struggling with it, you're not going to be able to help your kids fight against it. So to me, the first step is to make sure you have a grasp of it in your own life, which is why the next generation is becoming so engrossed in it as well. It's because our generation that are, in our late 20s, 30s, 40s, the word of dads right now, we're still battling it at rates to 70, 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So until we figure it out, we're not going to be very successful helping our kids figure it out. So that's the first step. And the second step is just being a active, engaged, and present father, and being there and building a relationship to your kids, you can have those conversations. That if some, little Johnny down the street shows them, in our age, it was little Johnny down the street showing us their dad's Playboy. Our kids' generation is little Johnny down the street pulling up Pornhub on their phone and showing it to them. That's the difference now, generationally. But when that happens, when little Johnny down the street shows your son porn, have that relationship with your son that he'll come to you and tell you. And will talk to you about it. And won't hide it from you. That's the important thing, is building that father-son relationship, father-daughter relationship, because it's becoming increasingly worse with girls too, so that you can have those conversations about it.
So, I mean, in a connected world, it's addicting. We battle that addiction to the technology.
Right.
And we have to, as parents, connect with our kids on a deeper level than the technology. And how do you do that?
Well, I think the best way is to get the kids away from the technology as much as you can. I think we're giving kids cell phones way, way, way too young. Way too young. I mean, now maybe I just sound like an older millennial that's bitching about how back in my day I didn't have a cell phone until I was 18 type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I sound like that. I don't know. But it's true. But we're giving 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds completely unfiltered access to the entire internet. And are satisfied with that because they shut up and leave us alone. I mean, that's honest. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And they just are getting exposed to everything. Even if they're not actively searching up porn, half of TikTok is porn, half of Instagram is porn. Even if it's not graphic, hardcore porn, it might as well be. I say all the time, it doesn't have to be naked to be porn. If anybody watched the Grammys a couple weeks ago, which I didn't, but I saw enough clips on Twitter to realize that's just straight up porn on network television. So wherever these kids go, it's being exposed to them. So I think the best thing we can do, because to prevent kids from getting addicted to dopamine, is keep the technology away from them. But it's not just a matter of just being a strict parent who doesn't let their kid have a phone. We have to be active, engaged presence with our kids. We have to spend time with our kids. Our common friend Zach Small has a saying that you give your kids presence, Presence, not presence, Presents. And we want to give our kids the best of our time and give everything else the rest of our time. Normally what most men, fathers especially, do all the things, they put work first, they put hobbies first, they put sports first is a huge thing. And then whatever time's left over happens to be left over, they give to their kids. Which should really be the exact opposite. The kids should take the priority of the time, and whatever time is left over after that, we spend doing our hobbies, fun stuff, whatever we want to do. And so I think getting our kids away from the dependence on technology and replace that with our time and our presence. And you'll see not only with your relationship with your kids, your kids will be better kids, stronger kids, more emotionally mature kids, but you'll keep them from going down these roads of dopamine addiction, of device addiction, and in turn, porn and sex addiction.
Yeah, and it's spot on. And you touched on sports, and I think, we're probably much alike. I was raised idolizing Michael Jordan. That was my idol growing up.
Yeah.
And, wanted to be an NBA basketball player and, had all the big dreams, just like most boys our age. But now it's kind of, as I look out at the world, I'm like, it's out of the relationship men have with sports. It's out of right relationship.
Yeah.
And it's like, I almost have an aversion to it now where I don't want to spend any time because it feels like such a waste of a time because I feel like us as fathers, have abdicated our power and our influence to the athletes, celebrities, whoever it may be. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're just giving our power away in every area. And it's like, that's what kind of spurred me to start the podcast and talking about this, because it's like, I want fathers to be the heroes in their own homes.
Right.
And it's like, giving our power away to sports and porn and whatever else it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with sports in and of itself. I mean, I grew up outside Chicago in the 90s, man. Michael Jordan was God. And so I grew up with Michael Jordan and Sammy Sosa and all the Chicago greats, and so I love sports too. And there's nothing wrong with sports. Sports themselves are great, and it's great for kids to be involved with sports, and it's great for dads to coach sports. Mm-hmm. The problem is sports has become almost a god to people. It's become an idol, and it takes up their entire lives. Men can name the fantasy stats of every guy on their fantasy football team, but couldn't tell you the name of their son's teacher. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
They're spending 7, 8, 9 hours on a Sunday afternoon guzzling beer and eating wings and watching football when they could be spending time building relationships with those kids. And what they're doing, and why sports to me has become that idol, is that men are living their dreams, living their adventures out vicariously through those guys. So there's a clip I saw the other day. It's from I don't even know the name of the movie, but it's a George Clooney movie from 10 years ago or so. And he's about to fire this guy. And he says to this guy he's about to fire, he says, why do people love athletes, famous athletes? And the guy says, well, because they all sleep with, beautiful supermodels. And the guy's like, no, that's why we love famous athletes. He's like, kids love famous athletes because they never gave up on their dreams. And that's what men have done. And so this guy then asked him, how much did they pay you to give up your dreams when he got his first job? And, he took his first job 30 years ago for $30,000 and a 401k and gave up on his dreams. But that's what men have done. Men have given up on their dreams. They've given up on their mission and purpose in life. And so instead, they live out their lives vicariously through sports, through other people going on adventures. All these Instagram accounts that are so popular of people traveling all over the world and rock climbing and God knows where and doing all these things. Yeah. The reason those are so popular is because people are living out their dreams and their fantasies and their adventures in life through those other people instead of going and doing them themselves. No, not everybody can sell their house and buy a Sprinter van and go and live on the road all the time. But it doesn't have to be. We've gotten comfortable with mediocrity. We've gotten comfortable with just the Groundhog Day life where you get up, you go to work, you come home, you argue with your wife, you go to sleep and do the same thing all over again. And so men are seeking adventure. They're seeking a mission. They're seeking a purpose. That's ingrained within us at the soul level. There's an author that I really, really enjoy. His name's John Eldredge, and he wrote this book called Wild at Heart about the masculine Christian men. And then that he says, every man has a battle to fight, an adventure to go on, and the beauty to rescue. Well, men today don't have a battle to fight, and they sure as heck don't have an adventure to go on. And because of that, there's no beauty to rescue. So men are living vicariously through sports, through adventure, through all these other things. They're not living their life for themselves. They're living it through other people. And the same thing happens with porn. And I'm not saying that every man wants to go out and sleep with 100 women. That's not the point. Mm. But they're seeking adventure. They're seeking something through that. It's not just that they're seeking to screw as many women as possible. They're seeking something. They're seeking connection. They're seeking intimacy. They're seeking acceptance. Or maybe they're running away from something. Maybe they're running away from rejection or a feeling of not being good enough or whatever. But they're seeking something through it. So there's always this inner battle to fight. There's always this adventure that we need to be going on, that we need to be pressing forward towards. And men don't have that. And they've given up on that and accepted mediocrity. So we live it vicariously through all these other things.
So what's your adventure? What's your dream that you're living out?
Well, for me, my mission and my adventure kind of fell on my lap. It wasn't anything that I intended to do. I never sought out in my life to be coaching strangers online to quit watching porn. That was not the dream I had when I was 10 years old. But God kind of put this mission in my lap. So I worked to fix my addiction, and he opened doors for me to help other men. And every time I opened that door a little crack, God pushed it open even farther and opened up other doors and other opportunities for me. So I found my mission, my purpose in life in serving God by helping men through this. And it's not just porn. Porn's kind of my niche, I guess, if you will. But it's just in helping men realize who they can become. Helping men break out of that average life, that Groundhog Day life. Mm-hmm. And become the man they're capable of being. Become the husbands and fathers they're capable of being. Men finding adventure, finding purpose, finding a mission outside of themselves, outside of their family. Too many men make their family their mission. And especially make their wife their mission. Their mission in life is just to please her and do everything that she wants her to do so that she might touch my wiener at night.
So it's not supposed to be happy wife, happy life, I take
Happy wife, happy life is the biggest lie that we've sold to men over the past 20, 30 years. Absolutely. So men need that mission, and the wife goes with you on the mission. The wife is our helper on the mission. That's why women were created. Genesis 2, God created women because he said Adam needed a helper. Adam's mission was to have dominion over the air, the land, and the sea. And God said he needed a helper for that. So he created women to do that. So that's, too many men make women their focus. They make women the prize at the end. No, women aren't what to seek after. Women come along with us on that mission and help us and support us. So it's become my mission to not focus on my wife as my mission, but have my wife join me on my mission, which is to help other men, spread the gospel, help men become better men, husbands, fathers, and leaders.
That's an awesome mission. So going back to a little bit to living vicariously, I read a stat that virtual reality porn is going to be worth, I think it's $1 billion by 2025. Mm-hmm. Third only behind VR video games and VR like NFL related content. And for some reason, like that like stirred something in me. Like that's like one step closer to it being reality. Like it's living vicariously, but
Right.
it's gonna make you feel like you're even in the experience even more.
Right.
And it just feels like, you mentioned your faith. It just feels like the devil is just throwing more and more layers to make the battle harder and harder.
Sure is.
And so what role does faith, and how important is that role in your life?
My faith is everything to me. I mean, I'm nothing without that. I'm able to be free from porn today and able to have fixed my marriage because of my relationship with God. I'm not strong enough to defeat this on my own. No way. I'm going to give in to this every time because I'm weak and I'm a sinner and I'm a human and I seek out human pleasure. So I can only be made holy through his work in my life. So he gave me the strength when I was weak. He gave me the courage when I was afraid. He gave me hope when I was hopeless. And one thing I want to say is that you don't have to be Christian to want to quit porn. It's not the reasons to quit porn aren't just because, a bunch of prudish Christians say it's bad. That's not the reason to quit porn. I've already listed off plenty of reasons why porn is bad. But that being said, it's a sin, first and foremost. So the penalty for sin, the Bible says in Romans 3:23, is death. And so we need to turn away from that sin, repent of our sins, and walk towards righteousness and walk towards holiness. God will let us do that. No matter how broken we are, he will accept us in love. And that's one of the hardest things for people to understand, because men who are watching porn, who are addicted to porn, are broken. They're men who aren't, porn isn't something I say all the time. Porn isn't about pleasure. Porn's about pain. So people aren't watching porn because they're horny. They're watching porn because they're hurting. They're watching porn because they're in pain. And they're trying to either find something in it or run away from something in it. It's not a sexual issue, it's an emotional issue. And so they're hurting. They're broken. They're trying to find fulfillment, acceptance, love, peace, whatever it may be. They're trying to find something through it. And you're never going to find it. There isn't enough porn you can watch in the world. There isn't enough sex that you can have in the world. There isn't enough booze you can drink or as much drugs as you can shoot up in the world that will ever fill the hole in your heart. Ever. Only God can fill that hole in your heart. And when we stop looking at all these worldly ways to try and find that fulfillment and that peace, we never will. Only until we look to God, and he can provide that peace that passes all understanding, like Philippians says. That's the only way we find that true peace and that true healing, is through a relationship with him. And that forgiveness, because we're broken. We think we're unforgivable. I've done horrible things in my life. I've been addicted to porn for 15 years. I cheated on my wife countless times. I did horrible things. I neglected my kids. I chose porn and sex over my kids. In my heart, I'm thinking, oh, dude, I'm just a piece of shit. No one's ever going to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve acceptance. I don't deserve to have my wife back. But Christ forgives us. He takes that sin away and washes us white as snow. But then he says in turn, like he said to the woman caught in adultery in John 8, he says, go and sin no more. So that's what we do. We turn from it, he forgives us, and we go and sin no more, and we help others not to do it, to break free from it.
Yeah, and that's a heavy, and that's heavy stuff that you just shared. It's not something that a lot of men are comfortable sharing. And, here you are on what will be a public forum, sharing that.
Yeah.
what would you say it? So your faith is key. What would you? What's the other? What's another key thing that a man needs to get over this hump of quitting porn?
I think brotherhood and accountability. So we need men to be with other men. Society's made it to where they've made a mockery of male friendship, of male fraternity. To where if two men are close friends and are closely connected on an intimate level, they're automatically gay. You know, or they joke about it and call it a bromance or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, they make light of it. And so men, their conversations never go beyond sports and beer and cars and the weather. Because they're afraid of this alienation. Oh, if I share my emotions, if I develop this deep connection with another man, I must be gay then, because that's what gay dudes do. That's feminine shit. That's not manly. But that's exactly what men need. One of my favorite passages of scripture, actually, this Bible is open to it. It says Proverbs 27:17 is that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And that's what men need. They need to come together to build each other up. That's what we do in the Fraternity of Excellence. We come together. We share our burdens. We share our struggles. We share our wins. And we build each other up and support each other up. A part of that is accountability. Porn addiction, sex addiction is something that can be so easily be hidden, which is one reason that it's gotten so bad. You know, if you're a raging alcoholic, you can't hide that. You know, if you're strung out on heroin, you can't hide that. But you can hide porn. You can hide all these things. And so you need accountability. So you need a brother to come alongside you, to support you, to love you, encourage you, to hold you accountable. Someone that you have no reason to hold anything back from. Someone that you can be completely open and honest with. And have them be that accountability point. There's a reason they have sponsors and stuff in AA. Because it works. You know, you need someone to be there with you in that battle. Someone who's been through it. Someone who can support you during those times. Someone who can tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. You know, they're going to love you. They're going to support you. They're going to encourage you. They might give you a kick in the ass every once in a while, and you probably need it. So that's what we need. We need brotherhood. We need fraternity. And we need accountability.
I like it. I see your book there, Living Porn Free.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the phone and the broken screen.
Mm-hmm.
What made you choose that? Was there?
Well, yeah, it was so much of porn happens on the phone now. I heard a stat, you know, something 85 to 90% of people watch porn on their phones now versus a computer, which is another reason that makes it easily so much more hideable, like I was just talking about, because it's not at a shared computer or anything like that. But just that imagery of the broken screen, of how porn breaks us. Breaks our family, puts cracks in us as the men, puts cracks in our family and leaves things shattered. And once it's broken, it's really hard to fix. The other thing you'll notice on that cover is the battery level is about at 0.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And that's the same thing too. I mean, that's you know, metaphorical as well, is that it drains you. It drains you of energy. It drains you, you know, it just physical scientific things. It drains you of energy. It drops your testosterone. It makes you weak and lazy, and you have no drive to move forward. So kind of those images all together to me kind of add up and create kind of a visual of what porn does to you.
Yeah, I like it because it is the perfect metaphor, because it's, you know, we've all broken our screens and have been too lazy or too broke to go get it fixed. Mm-hmm. And it just like oh, it's fine. The phone works. So we're functioning just fine, but not realizing that our vision is impaired.
Right.
And it's like the same thing, watching porn. We don't realize that it impairs our vision, like how we may look at our wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it so for a guy that doesn't he's in the beginning, or he's coming out of the fog, and he doesn't want to dive into a huge group of men. He comes to you for coaching. How does that relationship start? What does that look like?
So most guys reach out to me either through Twitter or social media, or through a referral, somebody that knows me, something like that. Sometimes, honestly, that's the hardest part, is to reach out and say, hey, man, I need help. Like, I've been trying to quit on my own for a while. I can't. I'm struggling. This is destroying my life, and I need help. So that's how a lot of guys come to me. What my coaching looks like is I'm not a pastor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor, therapist. I don't have letters after my last name. I'm just a guy who's been through this battle and been through the darkness, and now I'm turning around and helping guide you through it. So basically what I do is come alongside these men, help them on this journey, guide them, give them the path forward to avoid the minefield, encourage them, love them, support them, keep them accountable, tell them what they need to hear, what they want to hear. I work kind of on two different levels. So the first level is habits. So these are kind of the more practical things. Accountability is probably the biggest part of that. But different things like routine, building a routine. A lot of guys are very habitual, very almost ritualistic with the way they watch porn. So they either are, it's like the same time of day, the same scenario, the same room of the house. It's all very cyclical and very ritualistic. For me, it was late at night. I'd be down in the basement watching TV, watching sports or something like that. My wife would be upstairs in bed and the kids would be in bed or whatever. And I'd be sitting there watching a baseball game or hockey game or whatever and scrolling through my phone, and one thing leads to another, and then I'm on porn. So I had to create a whole different routine to avoid that vulnerability. So we build routines around the vulnerable areas, build routines to encourage good habits and break bad habits. That accountability that I already talked about. If you need to put blocking software on your phone, if you need to, journaling is a huge thing to help track your progress and those type of things. So we want to have all these habits in place, but defeating porn addiction is so much more than just breaking a bad habit. If it were just breaking a bad habit, guys would be able to quit at the drop of a hat. It's deeper than that. And so that's why so many guys relapse, because they just treat, it's just a bad habit. If I can go 21 days without it, I can beat this. Well, they go a while without it and they eventually go back to it. So we have to dig deeper and discover the real problem. I use the example of an alcoholic who decides they're going to quit drinking. So they pour all their booze down the drain. So that takes away that opportunity. It takes away that temptation. But it doesn't deal with why they drank in the first place. What drove them to drink in the first place? That's what we have to discover, is the why. Why are we addicted to porn? What's keeping us entrapped there? It's not, like I said, it's not that we're horny. It's not that we're hypersexualized. It's not any of that. There's a deep inner reason, an emotional reason that we're addicted to porn. Either we're seeking something out or we're running away from something. It's something we have to heal from. Porn's not a habit to break. It's something to heal from. So we have to tear apart those layers to discover that why. Maybe deep down it's a fear of rejection. Maybe it's a fear of not being good enough. there's all these different emotional things. I work with guys that have obvious red flag trauma. Guys who were sexually abused or physically abused or had major trauma, like somebody died or divorced or something like that. But just as often, they don't have those major things. But there's certain emotional things that happen to us, often in our adolescence, that left scars. And we learned in our younger years, typically our teenage years, when we're hormonal and discovering all these things and discovering sexuality and masturbation things, we learn to mask those emotional pains with porn and sex. So whatever pain we were dealing with at that point has stuck with us. And whenever we feel that pain, we run away from it. So it may have nothing to do with sex, it may have nothing to do with porn, but something happens that triggers that emotion inside of you. And we've ingrained ourselves and taught ourselves and learned that the only way to deal with that is to run away to porn and sex. So we use that as our self-medication. We use that as our escape, as our stress relief. And so what it really takes to heal is to figure out what those core things are. And so some of what I do with coaching is going through that, and it's breaking down some stuff. And we're going to tear off some scar tissue and some Band-Aids and start looking at some painful shit. But that's where the real healing takes place. It's not surface level, just breaking habits. There's habitual parts to it, of course. But the real healing comes from healing the wound inside.
No, I love it. Your mission is very much needed, and we need strong fathers in the homes again. Absolutely. And that's what I hope in a small way I aim to do here, and talking with men like yourself who are living it, who are doing it on a daily basis. We need as many men as possible talking about this stuff. And the aim here, like I said, is to help fathers become heroes in their own home. Mm-hmm. And how would you define a Hall of Fame father?
Well, I don't think there's any hard set way to do that. I don't think it's like do these 3 things and you automatically become the greatest father ever. Mm. But I think it boils down to a couple of different things. I think one being present, like we talked about earlier, presence over presence. Just being there, just giving them time. You don't always have to have the right answers. Every father's going to make mistakes. Every father's going to screw up. So it's not that you always have the right answer or the best advice or the best, make the best decisions or the right decision all the time. We're going to fail at that. But being there is the most important thing. Studies show that the presence of a father is more important than any other element of fatherhood. Just the fact that he's there and available and has a relationship is the most important thing. But then second, I think being an example to your children, not just do what I say, but do what I do. Too many fathers say one thing and do another, and the kids notice that. Even at a young age, they'll notice that. Even in, and 5, 6, 7 years old, they'll notice that. If you don't live up to the expectations that you expect of them. So actually lead, be the leader, be the man, be the head of the household. Too many men, it's the whole, like we talked earlier, the whole happy wife, happy life thing. And the women are really wearing the pants in the house. And that's a shame because that's not their role. That's the man's role. And so be the example to the kids and show them the way, not just tell them the way. So to me, those are the 2 biggest things. Like I said, there's no, maybe there's probably some course somewhere online that somebody will sell 10 steps to a great father, and it probably sells all kinds of copies, which is fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's, it's being present and being the example, I think, are the 2 most important things to being a good father.
Short and simple. Tim, where can people find you?
So the best place probably to find me is on social media. I'm at Timothy Reigle, TimothyReigle, on Twitter and Instagram. My website, my blog, and my podcast is called Into the Wilderness. So you can do that at intothewildernessblog.com or timothyreigle.com. Those are probably the best place to find me. Reach out to me. My DMs are always open. If you have questions or concerns or anything, or you want to talk or are interested and need help with coaching, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thanks for your time tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.